A couple of years ago, my wife and I went to a Sam's Club. And if you don't know what a Sam's Club is, it is a kind of warehouse grocery store thing here in the United States. And you have to have a card to get in to the club. Okay, so it's a club. You have a membership, and we walked in, and normally there is a customer service representative at the front checking your cards as you come in. And today, on that day, there was the representative there, but in addition to checking the cards, she also was handing out pieces of paper encouraging persons to go and download the Sam's Club app. And basically, what you did with this app was, as you were putting items in your cart as you shopped, you were supposed to scan each of the items with this app. And it compiles a list so that at the end of your grocery shopping, you would go up to the self-checkout, scan the barcode that the app gave you, and it would automatically pull up all of your purchases right there, and you would have a speedy checkout. And for most people, I mean, you just look at this and go, wow, that is cool. But it was interesting for me because I looked at it and I went, this is interesting. Sam's Club is actually making their workers promote their own job loss. And that kind of blew my mind, because if everybody did this, there would be no need for checkout persons at the front. And so they were quite literally promoting the loss of their own jobs. That was something to think about. But here's another interesting question. Did that customer service representative actually have a choice? Because it was their job to do what management said. And in thinking about AI, and AI art in particular, the question is, do we have a choice? AI is coming. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And everybody seems to be scrambling, coming up with their ideas. And I am a hobbyist artist. And over the last couple of weeks, I have just binged watched every AI video that I have come across. And it's been quite a journey. Some of the I've probably watched almost every AI. If you have watched the AI video, I have probably watched it as well. I mean, I have watched Ergo Josh, Tim McBurney, Trent Chaniguga, Ross Draws, Jono Dry, Alex William, Robot Pencil, Linguist Bowman, Nor Bradley, Borrow CG, Hardy Fowler, Adam Duff, Pixel Perfect, William Terry, Proco and Marshall talk, quite a few Proco videos on AI. I've watched all of them. Carla Ortiz with the community that she has been involved with, Benny Productions, Thuman, Miles Johnson in conversation with Steven Zapata, Mew Triple, Duchess Celeste, Steven Zapata's video, of course. I've even watched things from outside of the art industry, like F Stoppers, Lee Morris, and Patrick Hall, the videos that they've done on AI art. Varna Maya, Cosmic Spectrum Art. I mean, the list goes on and on. I have just indulged myself and thrown myself into this topic. And you know, the interesting part about doing this is that everybody has their own take on what is going to happen. Some people are saying, well, they're not that good, while other professionals are being blown away. There are arguments about tools versus replacement. And for the purposes of this video, I want to take a different route than all of the other videos that I have watched. And I want to start off by just basically saying arguments don't really matter. And for what it's worth, everyone's views that I've seen are somewhat correct. And yet, we should all expect to be wrong. And I'm gonna talk through this quite a little bit and try to explain why I think basically most of the views, if not almost all of them, are in fact correct, but yet we should expect to be wrong. And at the end of this video, I mean, there was so much things to go through, and I made so much notes. I think at the end of this, I'm just going to ramble for a bit on and kind of go off on some of the videos that I've watched, some things that I found interesting, and talk about that. So if at the end you want to stick around for that part, fair game. All right. So first of all, how could everybody be right when they sound so different? Because you have people who are clearly kind of excited about it, some of those who are pro, it's not going to be bad, and yet there are some doom and gloom. So how is it possible that everybody is likely correct? Well, let me get at this by talking a little bit about photography. So for a little bit, I was into photography as well. And one of the things you learn pretty early on in photography is the control of the aperture of your camera, right? Whether it's open or closed, pictures will look really different depending on your focus settings. So if you set your camera up so that you have a shallow depth of field, what happens is that you normally end up with one or several subjects in focus, while the rest of the picture or the background all goes blurry, right? And this is something that you use for like portraits and stuff like that. And then there is the deep field view that captures a larger area of focus, and you're often trying to keep almost everything in the image sharp and clear, everything in focus. A lot of landscape photographers would use these settings more to keep the majority of the picture in focus. So the key to think about here is that as a photographer, you're taking the same photo. You can take the same photo, and depending on your aperture settings, depending on what you're focusing on, your picture can look completely different from someone else using taking the same picture but using a different aperture setting. And I think this is really the distinction between the different views that we are seeing when it comes to AI art. And I'm going to flesh this out a little bit, focusing on the difference between those who seem more pro, not really concerned about AI art, and those that are very concerned. It's almost like a difference between looking at a utopian view and a dystopian view of the future as it relates to art and AI in general. All right, so I'm going to break this down into several categories to help make the point here on what's being focused on. There's the shallow depths of view that just brings a few objects into view, and then there's the deep field. So the first thing that I want to talk about is a lot of people are focused on current versus future state of AI art. And those who tend to be more pro AI or not as concerned, they tend to focus more just on the current state of AI. You hear people make statements like, oh, it's not that good, it can't do hands, it can't do this room really well. If you ask it to do a certain camera angle, it can't do it very well. It can't replicate the same image with just changing one small thing. So basically, they're pointing out all things that that AI art can't currently do. Um, Things like big budget studios that are going to need the exact same style, the same character reproduced in different settings, all this type of stuff that AI art currently isn't even close to doing, at least in the versions that we see, which of course leads right into the idea of what those that are more concerned about AI art talk about, because they tend to go more long view. They go, this is what it's doing now, but imagine where it will be in just a short time. And so there's a difference here in focus. Current state versus future. And if I were to choose between this, I mean, when you had think about this, in the time that I have been watching these videos, there has already been updates to Midjourney. I mean, Midjourney version 4 came out, and now it's even crazier. So the question is, what versions are already being tested that we don't even know about as yet? What new features do they have? What new abilities do they have? I don't know, but I would say if you focus just on current, yeah, you can still come out with a pretty optimistic view. And so you're correct in pointing out the things that you currently point out if you're focusing on current, but there's also a future that you can take into consideration, but the future becomes more unclear as to what will happen, but we'll get to that later. Okay, another focus point difference between those that are not as concerned and those that are, it is what I call focusing on the elite versus focusing on others. Now, sometimes the word elite gets a little bit of a bad rap, but let me take off the negative connotation off of this word just for a bit. So I think it's very easy for us to miss out on how much on top of the pile we are. And for this example, I'm going to talk about myself first. This is a pretty small channel right now, and yet I did some research on how many channels on YouTube actually get at least 1,000 subs. And it turns out that there aren't that many. Only about 8 to 9% of the channels on YouTube ever get over 1,000 subs. And that's crazy because I'm already in the top 10% of all channels on YouTube. But it won't feel that way because we tend to focus so much on the super large channels instead of realizing how far ahead of the game we actually are in comparison to the total picture. It's easy to lose sight of it because we have all of the information right in front of us all the time. It makes it seem like we're at the bottom, when in fact we are actually closer to the top and more of one of the elite persons. And so when I hear a lot of the persons who are not as concerned, they, for better or worse, they are the elites, and they're focusing just on the persons who are actually at the top already. So I listened to one video and persons are talking about, I look at these AI images and I can tell they are AI. They just don't look right, and this and that, and they're not that good. Well, I can't tell. I mean, I have seen AI images that have simply blown my mind. And yes, likely for a trained professional, they can probably tell some of the images being AI, that they are AI, but for the vast majority of people, it will make no difference for them. It will make no difference. Other things like, people would say things like, for big studios, we're going to be needing more, but for things like logo designs, well, they'll be fine. And, well, some artists will be safe, but the big studios will still need a lot of artists to do X and Y, the things that AI currently can't do. But again, how many artists are working at big studios? And yet others bring out the point that they say, well, we'll need to switch to being more of a director. Like, we'll need to start a business where you're self-employed and you're kind of producing whole products. And again, the persons that I have heard say this, they are basically already self-employed artists. And again, it seems like a small step for them, but they are not incorrect in saying, hey, we're probably going to need to do more bigger projects, all this type of things. But I think they've lost a little bit of focus on how lucky they are in their positions as self-employed artists. Can everyone do it? Maybe, I don't know. But is it for everyone? Will it be that simple as just, oh, you're just gonna have to go off and start your own thing? I don't think they realize exactly how much they're in a special category as it relates to everyone else. And everyone can't be special. It's something rare. And it's not to say that they are wrong in their analysis. It's just that they are focused on those who are able to make these changes. And those who are more concerned are focused on everyone else. Those who are just doing logo designs on Fiverr, those who are just doing book covers or static 2D illustrations. There are a lot of people doing those jobs, and why would they now pay someone for that? That's something to focus on. All right, so another difference in focus point between those who are concerned and those who are not as concerned about this. It's a focus between how it will affect me as a person or you, the one person, but a loss of focus on how it will affect art in its entirety. The interesting thing I have found is that even the most unconcerned persons, when the AI art, let's say that they start getting images that are trained on their specific art style, all of a sudden everyone gets concerned. Because, of course, it affects me now directly. And all of a sudden, all of the unconcern goes away. We're really concerned about legal issues. This is where I kind of draw the line kind of thing. And they're not, I don't think they're wrong in this. It's, again, just a thing of focus. So it's kind of like I can see my way through these current AI changes, and so I'm not really as concerned. And this is true. I mean, again, going back to this talk about the top level persons in any field. The top level persons in any field will not have an issue almost regardless of what change goes by. I mean, people are still buying vinyl records, right? But the industry for vinyl records has narrowed down. It's not as booming as before. People still ride horses. People still need horseshoes. But the horseshoe industry and the carriage industry is not anywhere where it used to be. And so there will always be some people who will be able to continue on. And so their point is made. But when you focus on the larger view of where things were versus where things are now, you become more concerned just because of the number of people that will be affected. Sure, some will be able to transition, but if you take the wider view, put more of the picture into focus, you'll see there are going to be quite a bit of people affected by this. Some of them will continue on, some of them won't. And so with all of these different ideas about what may happen, who's concerned, who's not, and me saying that, yeah, they all kind of have a piece of the puzzle here, I just want to say that we should probably, though, all take this with a bit of humility, because we should almost expect that we're going to be wrong. And here's why. When I was growing up, we used to have a lot of conversations about, so this was okay, don't want to age myself too much here, but this was before cell phones were a real thing. I mean, there were satellite phones, and they were these huge clunky things that only certain military people or something like that would carry around, and some very important persons. I mean, cell phones weren't really a thing as yet, and we would have our landline phone, and we would fantasize about the day when we would have video phones, right? And we would sit down and imagine what it's going to be like. So what we thought is that you would still have a land phone, but it would have a screen on it, and it'd have a camera on it. And so you would pick up the phone, and hopefully you're wearing the right attire when you pick up the phone, because the camera is going to come on, and the screen is going to show you, and you're going to be like dodging the camera on the side and stuff like that. And this was our idea of what was going to happen when video calls came into play. And wow, were we ever wrong. I mean, the reality now of video calls has far exceeded any idea that we had ever thought of in terms of what the future would be. We have now these cell phones that almost everybody has. Again, even that statement is a little bit in the elite category, depending on who you're seeing. But I mean, so many people have these smartphones that not only do video calls wirelessly, which kind of blows your mind if you think about it, but it's like you can stream almost anything to your phone. You have a little computer in your pocket that also does calls, also does video, also does texting, email. I mean, the future is just so different than we could have imagined at the point where we were standing. And I think the same thing is going to happen with AI and AI art. I think the future is going to be very different from how we can even imagine. Even if we are having a positive spin, even if we're having a negative spin, I think we should expect that the future is going to be much different than we can even imagine. Sure, there will probably be that one person who got it exactly right. But I think we should assume that we're going to be wrong, even in our best guesses of what the future is going to turn out. And I do, though, have some concerns about AI art. And not AI art in particular, but the whole AI revolution as a whole. And it is for this reason. We talk about things like automation. And yes, automation has always been happening. People have always lost their jobs. New industries have always been created off of the advancing technology. And that is okay in the grand scheme of things. Now, here's the deal. every time there is a lot of advancement, there has also been a drive towards funneling resources, power, money up to fewer and fewer persons. Yes, overall, the overall living quality of everyone has also improved as technology has advanced. So I'm not against this people getting super rich on the front of it, but I do have a concern. The more and more wealth funnels up, and if something like general AI comes online, which would be the biggest advance ever, I mean, like, ever, it will probably be the biggest advance. I don't know for how long. As someone put it in Evan Conrad in Proco's video, basically, if we achieve general purpose AI, really at that point, nothing else matters. And this kind of concerns me, because what happens when there's a very small group of people that holds all the answers? Back to Evan Conrad. He went ahead and he painted this kind of utopian picture that if general purpose AI comes along, basically what happens is that the AI will be able to do everything better than humans, at least things that need to be done in the abstract. They'll be able to do everything better than humans, which for him says then the labor cost of everything goes to zero. And he's imagining a world where everything becomes free because no one needs to work to do this anymore. So you'll have no poverty, no sickness, because you can basically ask the AIs what the cure for this sickness is, and the AI will find the answer for you. And his idea for why this is true is because we've seen as technology gets better and better and goes on, everything gets cheaper and cheaper, right? So again, going back to the cell phones, there were only the really rich that had cell phones and all that type of stuff, but now so many people have far better cell phones than they did back then. Things like electricity has gotten cheaper, cars has gotten cheaper, travel have gotten cheaper. But again, I think this is a focus thing. He's focusing on utopia because homes have not gotten cheaper. They've actually gotten more expensive. And as good as AI is going to be, there is still going to be a need for physical stuff, like the ownership of physical stuff, in order to produce, for example, the food. Like he's talking about no poverty, no sickness, no hunger. It's like, okay, but somebody still needs to own the land that's being used to produce the food that AI is. Somebody still has to produce and own the buildings that house all of the compute for the AI. Somebody will be owning these things. And my question is, what happens when there are just a few people holding all the cards? Now, I'm not a proponent in kind of this fixed pie economy, right? So I do think that extra value can be generated. It's not like there is a limited amount of value, and every time somebody gains something, they take away a piece of pie that reduces what's left for everyone else. There is value that can be added from nothing at all. But there is a limit on physical stuff. It is a very real thing that if you, for instance, if I buy a piece of property in northern Michigan, that does reduce the overall amount of property that someone can buy after me in northern Michigan. It is not the same with physical things. And so I see AI being able to create, general purpose AI being able to create a whole lot of value out of nothing. And yes, that part is true, but the physical things, there will still be limits. And what happens when there are a few people able to then, because of AI, because if they're holding all the cards on AI, being able to procure rights and ownership of the majority of the physical stuff? I don't know what will happen, but Miles Johnson kind of painted the other side. So Evan Conrad with Proco kind of painted the utopia, and Miles was more dystopic in his view with Steven Zapata, and his only hope is that even the very rich at that point will figure out that it would be better, and this is kind of his words, that it would be better to just pay for their own security by keeping everyone fed and happy, and that would be better than trying to pay for a security or army to fend off the masses of disgruntles. And I don't know how this will turn out, to tell you the truth. I am of the opinion that our technology recently has been moving so fast that we as humans are not evolving and changing fast enough to keep up with the technology. I do have some fear that maybe our technology will eventually ruin us if we don't find a way around some very real human problems. So, for example, we currently have issues with social media having very real effects on our population because the algorithms in social media has figured out how to keep people on them and to kind of hijacked our humanity, for lack of better words. And it has real effects on many of our kids' families, in terms of their mental health. Also with the spread of information and misinformation. It's when almost anyone can just release the video and say, oh, this is how you do art. No, this is how you do art. No, this is what's true about this worldwide phenomena. This is what is true about. No, you're wrong. The question starts to become, how do we determine what is true and what is false? Do we even realize how interested or uninterested we are in that question? And I think our technology has begun to outpace our own intelligence and reasoning capabilities. And so it's something that kind of concerns me a bit. But I do think that humanity is resilient and we can overcome things. I just hope that we do it before it's too late. Because I can see this going really good and I can see it going really bad. And to tell you the truth, I really don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't. But if my history has proved anything, I'm expecting to be quite wrong about how this turns out. And I think that you should take a similar posture. Yes, have ideas, have concerns, have ideas about how to best survive it, but don't hold on to those views too tightly, because we're probably all going to be surprised about how it actually turns out, for better or for worse. Just keep that in mind. So this is the part of the video where I had planned to go in and kind of talk very specifically about some of the videos I've watched and some of the notes I took down, kind of calling out some things that I disagree with, some things that I agree with, kind of. But here's the deal. I listened back to the first part of this video, and I think the spot where I left it is a good spot to end, because what I'm trying to do here is not trying to create tensions between people or call people out. It's just to kind of reframe the discussion just a little bit, and I love discussions. I don't want to necessarily shut down conversation by giving the wrong impression. So if you have, here's what we will do. If you have specific questions or comments or want to hear my thoughts on a specific AI video that you watched, leave me a note in the comment and I will follow up and give comments on your thoughts, your questions, the videos that you have watched. So if you're really burning to hear my idea about a specific video you've watched, let me know in the comments. I've probably seen it as well, and we'll have the discussion there. I love discussion. I love talking about ideas, and I think we can have good discussion around this. All right, so that's where I'm gonna leave it for today. I'm not gonna call out people as I was initially planning. We'll leave it there for today, and let's continue the discussion in the comments.